So the transfer portal continues to be one of the most intriguing aspects around college football, and today we need to dive in and talk about the biggest storylines in the transfer portal that you may have missed. From Oklahoma identifying a running back they would love to add in, to Coach Prime in Colorado being mentioned for some of the top available players in the transfer portal, and of course, we've got to ask the question: what in the world is going on at South Carolina? Before we can start identifying all of these, y'all know the drill. I need to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Do you believe the transfer portal is about to start heating up? And let me know what you're thinking. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification. I do constant college football, and guys, this might sound absurd, but I want to see how close we can get to 20,000 subscribers before the new year. I know that's a lofty goal, but y'all have been unbelievable with the support, and if you're not currently subscribed, be sure to do so. I'm really interested to see how close we get, and I would love for y'all to join this unbelievable community. But having said all that, let's jump right into this, and we're going to start with the Oklahoma Sooners, where Oklahoma running back coach DeMarco Murray has identified a guy they would love to try and add in, and that's former Texas A&M running back LJ Johnson, who's a former blue-chip guy and a four-star prospect, one of the most coveted prospects when he was coming out of high school. And for Oklahoma, there's no doubt that there are some young guys on this roster in the running back room that so many of the Sooner fan base are excited about. We can talk about Barnes, we can talk about Sawchuk, but one thing that's so fresh in the mind of DeMarco Murray is the lack of depth they just experienced, not this season, but the season prior, where Oklahoma's running back room was really scarce. Whether that was due to transfers, whether that was due to off-field events or injuries, the Oklahoma Sooners were in a situation where their offense was almost handcuffed because they just didn't have the running back depth. And that's something they cannot afford to have happen, especially when Brent Venables is trying to turn this program around. They need to make sure they have adequate depth at every position, especially with Eric Gray moving on to the next level. So I think it makes complete sense for DeMarco Murray, for Brent Venables, and the Oklahoma staff to identify a running back they like and try and add them in, because that was something we just saw Oklahoma have a little bit of a depth issue at. Now, like I said, in fairness, they've done a great job identifying that and getting huge wins for top running backs, but I don't think you could argue adding in another blue chip guy to that room. So LJ Johnson to Oklahoma, that's a storyline we have got to watch. He's a very talented running back. I know there are going to be no shortage of suitors. If the Oklahoma Sooners could land him, well, they would be very happy. But now we need to transition and go to Colorado, where Coach Prime and the Colorado Buffaloes remain in talks for some of the biggest names in the transfer portal. And there are several names in the transfer portal we've already talked about in relation to Coach Prime, but today we're going to add some more in. Because here recently, Texas A&M defensive back Smoke Bouie entered the transfer portal, and this is one that if you're a Colorado fan, you have got to watch. The reason is simple. Because if we follow the Smoke Bouie recruiting storyline, it's an interesting one. He was at one time committed to the Georgia Bulldogs before he flipped that commitment to go to Texas A&M. And the reason was quite simple: Nick Williams. Whenever Nick Williams moved from being employed by Georgia to Texas A&M, Smoke Bouie made that move with him. And now that Nick Williams is employed at Colorado, one has to ask the question, could he make that move again? Bouie was one of the most coveted prospects coming out of high school, and institutions such as Georgia, Florida State, Texas A&M all really wanted him. If he follows Nick Williams to Colorado, that would be a huge win for Coach Prime and the Buffaloes. But it also begs the question, how many of these Texas A&M guys could Colorado and Coach Prime get a genuine look from? First and foremost, my question would be, why not? There's so much hype and excitement going on around Colorado. At least go check it out and hear the pitch. Why wouldn't you? And secondly, they have someone that has an in to a lot of those guys in Nick Williams. That's why I said whenever they hired Nick Williams, I thought it was a phenomenal hire for multiple different reasons. First and foremost, he is a great recruiter. We've seen this at Georgia. We've seen this at Texas A&M. And now that he's at Colorado, you have to imagine it will continue there, especially when you look at this staff. Coach Prime's leading it. We already know the caliber of recruiter he is. Remember, he flipped Travis Hunter, who, by the way, we'll talk about more this weekend after Jackson State's bowl game, but I have every reason to believe Travis Hunter will end up in Colorado. Once again, we'll sideline that for this weekend. We'll come back and talk about that this weekend at a more appropriate time. But it's not just transfer portal acquisitions that I'm watching for Coach Prime, far from it. Because this weekend, Coach Prime has said is going to be the most loaded weekend in Colorado recruiting history. And I asked you the other day, do you believe him? I have no reason not to, and already we've seen a major target, such as four-star blue-chip Malachi Coleman, express interest in coming to Colorado this weekend to at least check it out. That's huge. If you're a Colorado fan, just the fact that a guy who is scheduled to visit Michigan this weekend would cancel that visit to go visit Colorado, that's telling. That's huge for Colorado, and if you could get that win, what a win it would be. The transfer portal is something we've got to watch for Colorado, but make no mistake, they're making waves in recruiting as well. And I don't believe Coach Prime is going to have to rely on the transfer portal. I think he's going to be getting wins from every facet available, from recruiting and from the transfer portal. But once again, if we are focusing in on the transfer portal, Smoke Bouie is a name to know. Whether he ends up at Georgia, Florida State, or Colorado remains to be seen, but it is certainly notable that he made the move from Georgia to Texas A&M with Nick Williams, and then when Nick Williams goes from Texas A&M to Colorado, he enters the transfer portal. It's going to be very interesting to see where he ends up, but at the very least, I would be shocked if Colorado didn't get a look. So that's something we have got to watch. And finally, we've got to ask the question, what in the world is going on at South Carolina? Because when we look around college football, we see several institutions losing guys to the transfer portal. It's to be expected at this point. One of the things I always talk about, the transfer portal giveth, but the transfer portal absolutely taketh, and nobody is absolved from that. It doesn't matter. Look at Alabama. They're losing guys to the transfer portal, but make no mistake, they're going to get some big wins out the transfer portal. But in the case of South Carolina, they're losing starting guys to the transfer portal. And that's something we just really haven't seen a lot of. And it's not just one guy. They've lost a running back. They've lost 2 tight ends, and then they lost their starting edge to the transfer portal, and there seems to be some discontent there. This is something we're going to have to watch going forward, because South Carolina isn't like Alabama right now, where we look at the guys hitting the transfer portal, and then you look and you're like, okay, well, those are depth pieces. And as much as you would love to keep those depth pieces, it does make sense. No, starters are hitting the portal from South Carolina, which begs the question, what in the world is going on in South Carolina? What in the world is going on with Shane Beamer? I'm really interested in watching this because they can't afford to keep losing these pieces. They're a team that's building, but one of the things you have to build is depth. You cannot be a team that's trying to get to the promised land that loses depth. You need that depth. So it's something we have to watch. Super interested in hearing from all of you. This is going to be a huge weekend in recruiting and transfer portal, and y'all already know. We're going to be right here covering it all. That's it. See you.